Hello, Monday Night Marketing 658. We are Team 1, newly branded as The Market Whiz with two Z's. Presenting with me today is Elena, Jessica, Jonathan, Ahmed, and Jennifer. Today we are presenting Case Assessment 1. Can you say what your strategy is? The article was published by Strategy Unit Harvard professor David Colas and Senior Research Fellow Michael Ruckstad. Colas studied and consulted for Edward Jones, who is the focal point of the article. In addition to Edward Jones, they also looked into Boeing, Walmart, Wells Fargo, and a few others. The article discusses the potential pitfalls for not having a clear strategy while explaining how to effectively outline and pinpoint a clear strategy. Ruckstad identified three critical components of a good strategy statement. First was objective, which most companies have in some form or another. However, it is usually wrong. They found that companies tend to confuse their statement of values or their mission with their strategic objective. He then discusses scope, which he states is multidimensional, and when done properly, it can help managers identify which activities are most important and which are not. Advantage is the final component. Ruckstad concluded that a sustainable competitive advantage is the essence of strategy, while also being the most critical aspect of a strategy statement. Companies tend to confuse statements of value with strategic goals. We do not want a complicated mission statement. We want a concise statement of concrete goals. The article concludes with the best way to craft a strategy statement. For further details on the process, I will turn it over to the group.
All right, let's take a look at objective. A large part of this case focuses on objective. Objective is defined as what a company wants to achieve through making plans, tracking their progress, and working towards a particular goal. This could be done through a strategy statement. Any strategy statement must begin by defining goals it is trying to achieve and should include a time frame in order to achieve it. There are four main components of an objective: defining the scope or domain of the business, competitive advantage, trade-offs, and a statement of values versus the strategic goals. First, let's look a little bit more on the scope or domain of a business. It is necessary to define the scope or domain of a business because, in essence, it's the part of the landscape in which the firm will operate. For example, if you're a restaurant, what type of food do you serve? Do you provide sit-down or fast food? Is it more upscale or is it casual? What region are you operating in? Elena will be able to dive a little bit more on scope in a bit. Now let's take a look at competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is the essence of strategy. How do you set yourself apart from other people within your industry? What does your company do differently? Externally, what new values do they provide to your customers? Internally, how must your activities be aligned in order to achieve this? Ahmed will be able to dive a little bit more on this later. Looking at trade-offs. If you pursue growth, profitability is a lower priority. If you pursue institutional clients, retail customers are a lower priority. If lower prices is the value you offer, you may not be able to offer as much variety or quantity. If utilizing economies of scale, you cannot accommodate individual customer idiosyncratic consumer needs. Now, looking at the statement of values versus strategic goals. Companies in the same industry may have the same values, but most will have different objectives. Companies tend to confuse statement of values with strategic goals. We do not want a complicated mission statement. We want a concise statement of concrete goals. Now, taking a look at some of our major takeaways for objective. Objectives need to be specific, measurable, and time-bound, and focus on a single goal. You have to be very specific on what you want. All firms want to maximize shareholder value, but the important question is, how exactly do you plan to achieve this? And in what amount of time do you want this to be done? You can have subordinate goals that lead to the main objective, but everything should be driving by the one simple statement of what you want to achieve. Now let's move on to Elena to talk a little bit more on scope.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the scope, how it's defined, and how Edward Jones actually used it to help his enterprise become more successful. So first thing is that the scope defines three dimensions or encompasses three dimensions. One is the customer offering, second is the geographic location, and third is the vertical integration. In the case of Edward Jones, the most important one was the customer. And what people don't realize about the scope is that it's really based on boundaries and clarity. And it definitely identifies where not to go. Specifically with Edward Jones, it's more based on the customer, right? So within the scope, what they wanted to do is not betray a client's trust, especially since their client didn't really do a lot of financial transactions or didn't really feel comfortable making serious financial decisions without the support of a trusted advisor. So they definitely had a very niche market when it came to their own customers because they definitely knew the psychological aspect, or as they like to call it, the psychographic aspect of their customers. They didn't base it on demographics, profession, or spending habits. Again, rather, they used the psychographic aspect to help define their scope and really to define their boundaries and bring clarity to their enterprise overall. A scope encourages experimentation and taking initiative. And more so, really, they do the boundaries for scope because they don't want a lot of employees wasting long hours to try to figure out certain things, right? So with clear boundaries, it brings a lot more assets and even time to an enterprise to really expand and increase revenue and productivity overall. Again, with a case of Edward Jones, they never wanted to undermine the client's trust. So they definitely set clear boundaries. And again, when it came to defining their scope, the most important dimension for their enterprise was the actual customer.
All right. After getting an understanding of your business scope, we are going to talk about the business advantage. Advantage or competitive advantage, according to Oxford Dictionary, is the condition or circumstance that puts a company in a favorable or superior business position. Another definition by Wikipedia sees it as a set of attributes that allow an organization to outperform its competitors. Well, your firm's advantage is the essence of strategy. It is the most critical element of a strategy statement. It is comprised of two parts. One, a statement of value proposition. This is where you tell the customer why your product fulfills his or her needs. A so called strategy without a clear expression of this intent will simply not bear fruit. An example provided by Jan Rifkin in the Harvard Business Review to illustrate this is Walmart's value proposition, which is everyday low prices for a broad range of goods that are always in stock in convenient geographic locations. The other part is the optimal combination of activities taken by employees to deliver. This is about making consistent choices and arrange the firm's activities to align with the promise made to the customer. An example will be the finance brokerage firm Edward Jones backing its value proposition of provide convenient, trusted personal service and advice with the following activities. having one financial advisor per office. These offices are in turns located in strip malls, retail districts, not tall office buildings. This in turns makes it easy for Edward Jones targeted customers to visit at their own convenience. Okay. So after talking about the advantage part of the strategy, I will go ahead and pass the baton to Jessica, who will talk about how to craft a strategy statement. Thank you for listening.
Now that we've learned about the elements of a strategy statement, the next step will be to create the strategy. In order to do this, the team must develop a detailed understanding of customer needs and segmentation, as well as identify unique ways of creating value for those the organization serves. Part of the research will entail the team looking at its firm's capabilities and resources. The research will also include looking at the company's competitors' current strategies and be able to predict how their strategies might change in the future. Now, it is important to remember this is not just defining core competencies. Part of developing the strategy is finding the sweet spot that aligns the company with customer needs in a way that rivals can't, given the changing external factors such as tech, industry demographics, regulation, and so forth. The best way to do this, according to Collis and Ruckstad, is to develop 2 to 3 plausible but different strategic options. The process of developing this statement should include employees in all parts of the company at every level. The end results should be a brief statement that reflects the 3 elements of an effective strategy, which are objective, scope, and advantage, as we have covered previously. The statement should be fine-tuned and detailed so that it's communicable without misinterpretation. And as you'll see to the right of the slide, Edward Jones has a highly touted strategy statement. The wording in orange is a great example of clear and specific messaging. The implementation of the strategy will only work if each level of management is on the same page. If done successfully, the strategy statement will energize and empower the people of the organization, in turn leading to long-term financial performance.
So now it's time to answer the big question we asked at the start of this presentation. We have 3 core principles of a strategy statement: the objective, the scope, and the strategic advantage. Which one is the most important one to start with? Well, all 3 are very important, but when you're starting to craft your strategy statement, you absolutely have to begin with your objective. What do you want to do? What results are you hoping to accomplish? You're going on a journey with your company, but before you can get there, you have to know where it is you want to end up. Knowing your end game will allow you to better understand the scope of your strategy. If you don't define your objective, you can only define your scope in terms of what you've done before and not necessarily where you want to go in the future. You can say you're a company doing business in Texas, but if your goal is to grow outside of that region, you have to know where it is you want to go in order to redefine the scope of your operations. Similarly, your strategic advantage is also dependent on your objectives. If your business has an advantage now, that advantage may change or need to be reevaluated depending on your goals. Say your current advantage is a patent that lets you make a product nobody else can. That's great, but if you define your objective as developing new products, the old advantage is irrelevant. That patent on your existing product doesn't necessarily protect the new products you want to develop. Over and over, in most scenarios, the objective of your strategy defines everything else in your strategy. There's an old saying in the military: you define your tactics based on your strategy. You never let your tactics dictate your strategy. So you might be great at hand-to-hand combat, but if your enemy is a tank, you'll need to try to find something else to defeat it. Now that we've gone over the components of the strategy statement in depth, it's time to highlight some key points. First, be specific. Your goal can't be something vague like winning. It's a great goal to have, but it's so broad in scope that no 2 people will agree on exactly what it means or how to act on it. Next, you want your statement to be measurable. If your goal is to increase sales, that's something you can measure. You can do some basic accounting to see if you're selling more or less. If your goal is to make the world a better place, how would you even know if you're succeeding? How do you measure betterness over the entire world? It's just too nebulous to get your head around. You need to define your goal in terms that are very readily measurable in order to know if you've ever achieved it. Following that, you want to make sure your goals are time-bound in some way. You want to increase subscriptions over the next 18 months. If 18 months go by and subscriptions are down, you know you've failed to achieve your goal. Simple. If you fail to put a ticking clock on your goals, you've effectively stated that your company has unlimited time to achieve those goals, which can cause employees to believe that there's no pressure, no rush, no need to actually implement change until the sun burns out and the universe explodes. Whatever goals you set for yourself, you want to get them done probably before the end of time, hopefully while you're still alive to see them. Lastly, but importantly, keep your statement to 35 words or less. The idea here is less about actually counting words than it is about understanding your audience. The people in your company are human beings, they are not computers. People have limited memory and an even shorter attention span. You can give a computer 1,000 pages of text and it will remember it instantly and forever. People, on the other hand, can't remember each other's first names after they've been introduced a half dozen times. If you want people to actually remember your strategy well enough to act on it, it has to be something they can absorb easily. Remember, if you bore people, you lose people. So keep it fast, keep it exciting, and keep it short. So here we are at the end of the presentation, and I'd like to close it out by just summarizing a few of the main points that we discussed along the way. As I mentioned in the last slide, remember to target your objective to something specific, define the goals you wish to achieve, and establish a clear time frame for achieving them. It's also important to understand the scope of your business. This could be the kind of customer you serve, the kind of offering you're providing, or even the geographic location you do business in, or even all of the above. Clearly state your competitive advantage. You have something other people don't have, and it's going to help you achieve success. Focus on that and make your company's employees aware of it so that they can contribute to it. You also need to understand the strategies of your competitors. No business operates in a vacuum, and everybody has to constantly adapt to the changes made by all the other people who want to make money. If somebody copies you, you must find something new to do to differentiate yourself. If somebody finds an advantage that's superior to yours, you need to find something even better. Lastly, you need to find a way to bring this all together in a way that finds that magical sweet spot where your capabilities meet your customers' needs in a way that competitors simply cannot match. Being unique isn't enough, you also have to be good. Being good isn't enough if somebody else can imitate you. In the big Venn diagram of business, you only stay alive if you find a place where both of these spheres intersect. And that, my friends, concludes our presentation on the best way to craft your strategy statement and the most important parts of it. On behalf of Ahmed, Elena, Jennifer, Jessica, Monique, and myself, everybody here at Team One would like to say thank you very much for listening. We hope you learned a whole lot, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.